Today, the search steps up for a woman trapped under the rubble of a Sydney townhouse after a huge explosion.
The time frame that we're operating in is still within a window of survivability, and hence the focus of effort to really be exploring the building as thoroughly as we can.
Support for South Africa's ANC slumps in the party's worst election result in 30 years. Proposed laws to impose lengthy prison sentences for spreading non-consensual deepfake pornography. And a fierce storm causes major property damage and leaves thousands without power in WA's southwest. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ruby Cornish. Rescuers are still hopeful they'll find a woman feared trapped under rubble after a house explosion in Western Sydney. Emergency crews heard tapping noises in an area of the collapsed home at Wayland yesterday and believe it may have been the missing woman. Seismic equipment is being used in a delicate operation to determine whether she's under the rubble. Others were hospitalised after the blast hit surrounding properties. It's unclear what caused the explosion, but gas is believed to be a factor. Additional crews are on standby to assist with the active rescue operation.
This is still well within the window for someone to survive. Certainly the time frame that we're operating in is still within a window of survivability, and hence the focus of effort to really be exploring the building as thoroughly as we can, trying to make access to either physically inspect or with the use of our tools to inspect each possible area.
For more on this, here's reporter Sean Tarrant-Goodwin.
As you can see behind me, fire and rescue and police crews are searching urgently through the rubble here. We know that one woman believed to be inside one of the units at the time remains unaccounted for. That massive blast at around 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon completely levelled the back section of this unit complex here in Wayland in Western Sydney. Other homes around had windows destroyed, debris flying through living rooms. We know that 5 people in the complex at the time were taken to hospital but have since been discharged. But police and fire and rescue crews say they can't rule out the possibility that someone is still alive under the rubble at this scene, and they're continuing to use seismic monitoring and all the tools at their disposal to meticulously search through the rubble to try to locate that missing person.
People who share sexually explicit material that's been digitally created and altered will face serious criminal penalties as part of legislation being introduced into federal parliament. Under the legislation, sharing of non-consensual pornographic deepfake images will carry a penalty of up to 7 years in jail. Attorney General Mark Dreyfus says the move was prompted by an increase in material online, which he describes as a damaging form of abuse. For more on this, we are joined by online safety advocate, researcher and lawyer Noelle Martin, who is in Perth. Hi Noelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Now, unfortunately, your journey into this space began with some first-hand experience. Can you just tell us a little bit about what happened to you when you were 17?
Yeah, so my journey has spanned like around 11 years, and it started before I actually found out about what was happening to me. And perpetrators had been taking images of me from social media and doctoring them, digitally altering them into pornographic images. And then over time, this escalated to include deepfake videos. And so I've just spent pretty much my whole adult life dealing with this in some form or another.
And what kind of impact did that have on you as a young person?
Well, it has like a daily permanent impact. I mean, it impacts your employability, your interpersonal relationships, your romantic relationships, your ability to earn in the future and presently. And, you know, of course, the mental and emotional cost that it has is like inescapable.
And you've been advocating in this space for a long time. These new laws that are set to go before Parliament next week will make it a criminal offence to non-consensually share explicit images created using AI. But what kind of reforms have we seen in this space up to this point?
Right. So this is a bit of a question that I'm also interested in, because we do have laws in this space, and we have image-based abuse laws, and they've come to fruition over the last couple of years. Essentially, across Australia, although they vary between jurisdictions, it's already a criminal offence in many jurisdictions to distribute intimate images that have been shared without consent, including digitally altered intimate images. So my understanding is the government, in terms of these legislative reforms, also wants to tackle the creation of it. So next week we'll see exactly what they're intending here, and how they might expand from laws that we have in place that tackle the distribution of digitally altered intimate images.
And I'm just interested in this law specifically. I mean, if it had existed when you were 17, would that have made a difference? Because I understand that your case didn't necessarily involve images created using artificial intelligence or deep fakes specifically, right? It was other kinds of ways in which those images were being created.
Well, in my case, it was both. So they had like the usual crude kind of photo editing tools that were used, and then also AI generated videos a couple of years later. So in terms of whether these laws would help me, I don't believe they would help me, because the difficulty with regulating this issue is that you need to tackle perpetrators who potentially live overseas. And Australia is limited by jurisdiction. I mean, this is a global issue that's borderless. And you know, we're not going to, hopefully we will, but it's going to be difficult to actually hold people accountable, even though we have laws.
Yeah, I mean, the limitations of the laws, as you say, like we know the internet is a really difficult place to police. Catching perpetrators is hard. I mean, will we even be able to find the relevant people to prosecute?
Well, that's going to be the challenge for law enforcement, for regulators. And it's not even just about identifying them, it's actually bringing them to account, to justice. Whether or not we're going to see, you know, the resources given to law enforcement to investigate, and then are we going to see, you know, the courts actually bringing people to justice? And so there are so many challenges with these laws, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have them in place. I think that it's a step in the right direction, but dealing with it in practice is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, deepfake pornography is well and truly out there, as we've seen, and attempting to have this content taken down is often a fruitless exercise. I mean, how optimistic are you that we can, you know, successfully stem the tide?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm probably feeling a lot of despair with this issue, because it is so prolific now. It's become mainstream, and I really worry about future generations of girls and women who might not even be able to get jobs in their chosen fields because of it. But in terms of taking it down, I mean, we have a regulator, the E-Safety Commissioner, that's tasked with taking intimate images that have been shared down from the internet. But removal, and an emphasis on removal, is such a superficial and futile response when you're dealing with content that's hosted overseas, and perpetrators that are overseas. And also the fact that doesn't really tackle the root cause. That's just kind of sweeping the issue under the rug. And so you need removal, but you also need to hold people accountable, and as well hold social media companies accountable for enabling this.
Yeah, and I mean, going even further back in the chain, I guess prevention and education. Do you think that these laws will at least serve an educational role in showing people, you know, this is not okay, this is something that the government, that law enforcement takes seriously?
Yeah, I think that's where the power of these laws will really come in. I think that the educative function, the deterrent function, is really powerful here, and I hope that that in itself will help produce some sort of cultural change around this, because education is vital if we're going to tackle this issue.
Yeah, let's hope we can get some cultural change before it's too late. We'll leave it there. Online safety advocate, researcher and lawyer Noelle Martin, thank you so much for your insights today. It's been a really interesting conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, former Federal Treasurer Josh Frydenberg is considering a return to federal politics at the next election. He lost the Melbourne seat of Kooyong to independent Monique Ryan at the last election, but the ABC understands he's considering another tilt after a proposal to shift the electoral boundary for the seat was announced on Friday. The Liberal Party has already pre-selected finance professional Amelia Hamer as its candidate for the seat, meaning Mr Frydenberg would need the party to reopen the pre-selection process. Officers from the China's People Liberation Army have confronted Defence Minister Richard Marles at an international security conference after he criticised Beijing's military build-up. Mr Marles used a speech at Singapore's Shangri-La Dialogue to call China out for recent confrontations with Australia's military. He also voiced concerns about aggression towards the Philippines and Taiwan. Chinese officials at the event insisted China does cooperate with countries in the region. But Mr Marles says close attention needs to be paid to the signals that China's strategic behaviour sends.
A stable and sustainable regional order won't be possible unless all countries, but especially big ones, pursue their strategic objectives in a manner that respects the sovereign rights of our neighbours and the obligations imposed by international law.
Results from South Africa's election show that the party of the late Nelson Mandela, the ANC, has lost its majority for the first time in 30 years and will now have to find coalition partners to stay in power. Many voters appear to have blamed the ANC for rising levels of crime and unemployment, as well as corruption, power cuts and water shortages.
It had been a slow and steady day. And then this. The former president, now the head of the upstart MK party, an unexpected challenge to the ANC. Already reeling from voter anger over economic mismanagement and corruption scandals.
Jacob Zuma has created quite a stir here. He's made a rock star entrance. His party came third with an unexpectedly strong showing. Take a lot of votes away from the ANC.
And still trying to take more. He announced he had evidence of election rigging, said he was considering a demand for a full revote. The results aren't official yet, but they're clear. The ANC has lost the outright majority it held for 30 years. The most dramatic political shift since the end of apartheid. This is uncharted territory.
We ask for all electoral stakeholders to please remain calm, for leaders to lead this nation at this time, and for voices of reason to continue to prevail.
The ANC was born out of the struggle against apartheid, the violence of white minority rule that kept black people separate and unequal.
There's Mr. Mandela, Mr. Nelson Mandela, a free man.
The moment of triumph, Nelson Mandela released from prison, the first black president in South Africa's new democracy. The downfall marked by Jacob Zuma. He presided over a period of rampant corruption. Now he's making a comeback.
Understandably, I'm very disappointed.
But this ANC veteran says the party hasn't recovered since then.
We have failed. We talk about renewal, the renewal of the ANC, and it would take the form of making sure that elements who are really corrupt are removed from the organization. And we've really failed to act decisively to do that.
The ANC is still the biggest party, but it needs to find partners to share power. South Africa now faces weeks of turbulent coalition talks. Barbara Platt-Usher, BBC News, Johannesburg.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has insisted there will be no ceasefire in Gaza as long as Hamas remains in power. It's raised questions about an offer that was endorsed by US President Joe Biden yesterday. Hamas has provisionally welcomed the three-stage deal, which President Biden said was proposed by Israel. Mr. Netanyahu has referred to the deal as a non-starter. The decision comes amid rising pressure within Tel Aviv, with protesters taking to the streets over Israel's handling of the war. Family members of hostages are urging Netanyahu to accept a ceasefire deal.
We are here for one reason. We are here to say to Mr. Netanyahu, to Mr. Prime Minister, we are demanding that you will accept your deal, the deal that you suggest to the Hamas, you suggest to Qatar, and we must seal the deal and bring them home immediately.
Villagers in northern Papua New Guinea have spoken of warning signs they received before a landslide flattened an entire village. The landslide devastated PNG's Mulitaka district 9 days ago, killing scores of villagers. Survivors say they heard two loud cracks in the hours leading up to the disaster before the side of the mountain finally gave way in the middle of the night. PNG officials say there's still threat of further landslides, which may mean around 8,000 villages need to be relocated. Papua New Guinea correspondent Marion Farr is on the ground.
It's now been 9 days since a massive landslide flattened a remote village in Papua New Guinea not far from here. Locals are still using sticks and shovels to dig, desperate to recover their loved ones. Only 8 bodies have been found so far, but these survivors haven't given up hope of recovering others. On Friday, Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister James Marape visited the site, pledging about $8 million to help with the recovery. The government has also promised to send in heavy machinery, but so far there's still no sign of the diggers and excavators that locals say they desperately need. As you can see, this is an extremely remote and mountainous part of PNG, and getting help in is proving to be an ongoing challenge.
Now to Western Australia. Bunbury has been hit by another freak weather event, leaving 3 people in hospital and thousands of homes without power. It comes just a few weeks after a tornado tore through the regional city. Reporter Bridget MacArthur joins us now from Bunbury. G'day, Bridget. Just how bad is the damage where you are?
Morning, Ruby. Well, you might be able to see behind me, this is just a portion of the extent of the damage that was wreaked by that freak weather event last night. I actually was driving back from the pub that was on the main street because the power had gone out, and we actually came past here because this is our local pub, the Parade Hotel, and the damage then was extensive. There was debris everywhere. I mean, even today you can still see how much cleanup there is left to do. There were trampolines in people's ceilings. And last night I spoke to a woman who had come down. It was her birthday and she was staying at the Parade Hotel, and they were out for dinner when they got word that the roof had literally been ripped off of their room. Another young woman who I spoke to this morning actually was in the room at the time with her mum. She was down here for the hockey championships that they were having. She was supposed to be playing today actually, but instead she's going back to Perth because it's been such a traumatic event. As you can imagine, they were literally inside when the roof collapsed on them and had to crawl out from under that debris. So it's so thankful that we haven't had reports yet of any serious injuries. A few minor injuries, though. There were 2 women who were taken from Parade Hotel and another woman who was taken to hospital from the caravan park. So a huge effort from all the emergency services last night, and a huge effort yet to come in terms of the cleanup.
Yeah, we're just having a look at some of those pictures of the damage there now. It's very significant. And it was not very long ago that there was a tornado in Bunbury as well. So how's the community feeling given that, Bridget?
Yeah, I mean, pretty shook. You'd think that maybe that they'd be used to it by now, but I think the tornado was just such an outlier and something that a lot of people here hadn't experienced before, that we were kind of joking yesterday, a lot of people, that, oh, you know, there's a storm coming, hope it's not another tornado. And So, I mean, people are pretty shocked actually that those things have come true. Maybe we shouldn't have been joking about it. And it does seem like this event was more localised than that one a few weeks ago. But the damage that it managed to wreak in just this little pocket is really overwhelming, and like everyone I spoke to said the noise was just immense, and there was lightning as well at the same time. It just would have been a real chaotic scene, as you can imagine.
Yeah, chaotic sounds right. All right, we'll leave it there. Bridget, thank you so much for the update. In India, polls have closed following 6 weeks of voting in the national elections. Nearly 1 billion people were eligible to take part in the world's largest democratic poll. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's BJP is widely tipped to win a 3rd term in office. Counting of votes will begin on Tuesday. Mexico's election campaign has been labelled as the bloodiest in history following the murder of another candidate. Jorge Huerta Cabrera, who was a local council candidate for the Green Party in central Mexico, was shot dead on Friday. It brings the total number of candidates killed on the campaign trail to 37. Mexico is currently holding the largest set of elections in its history. They're voting for a new president, both houses of Congress and local officials. The Special Advisory Council for Myanmar says the country's ruling junta is losing control over vast tracts of territory, with ethnic armed groups expanding and consolidating regions under their control. The rise of anti-coup forces has left the junta without effective control of the country, posing the most significant challenge to the military in decades. Author and pro-democracy activist Ma Thida was imprisoned by the military junta in Myanmar for daring to oppose the regime. She explains why the breakdown keeps occurring.
Right now, a lot of people just thought it was the U-turn from the already being in democracy after the coup. But my argument is the way we have been gone through on the road to democracy has been lost during this, especially during this past decades. It was like a maze already, you know. That's why we need to getting down all of the walls of this maze to get back to the road to democracy, because we never ever have a full democracy during these decades of the quasi-civilian, quasi-military administrations.
Time for sport now with Jared Coote.
Edwards has been ruled out of Game 1 of the State of Origin series with a quad injury. Edwards was set to make his New South Wales debut at fullback on Wednesday night, but felt some tightness in his left quadricep at training, with scans today revealing a strain. James Tedesco will now replace Edwards at fullback, but the Panthers player will remain in camp with the Blues. Tedesco is now withdrawn from the Roosters match against the Cowboys later on this afternoon. The Canberra Raiders have beaten the Dolphins 26 points to 25 in an NRL Golden Point thriller at Redcliffe. A Jordan Rapinoe field goal secured the victory for the Raiders. Rapinoe had never kicked a field goal in more than 200 NRL matches, but kicked 2 last night, with his second in Golden Point sealing the victory. Earlier, the St George Illawarra Dragons beat an under-strength Panthers side 22 points to 10 at Penrith. The Dragons were down 10-0 at half-time, but produced an impressive comeback in the second half to secure victory. Real Madrid are now European champions once again for a record 3rd with Madrid. Australian golfer Minjee Lee holds a share of the lead after 3 rounds at the Women's US Open in Pennsylvania. The 2022 champion sits at 5 under for the tournament in a 3-way tie with American Andrea Lee and Thai player Wichini Michai. Lee is one of only 5 players under par, and her round of 4 under 66 matched the low score of the tournament. The winner of the Open will take home more than $3.6 million in prize money. Australia's Alex de Minaur has advanced to the 4th round of the French Open for the first time. The world number 11 fought back from a set down to beat Germany's Jan-Lennard Struff in 4 sets, 4-6, 6-4, 6-3, 6-3. He'll now face Russia's Daniil Medvedev after he beat Thomas Mahash in 4 sets. Thanasi Kokkinakis fought back from 2 sets down, but then lost in 5 to American Taylor Fritz. And world number 1 Novak Djokovic fought back from 2 sets to 1 down to beat Italian Lorenzo Musetti. In the AFL, Geelong is back on the winners list. They beat Richmond by 30 points at Cardinia Park last night. The Cats won 15-9-99 to the Tigers 10-9-69. The result broke a 4-game losing run, their worst in Chris Scott's 14 seasons as Geelong coach. In yesterday's other matches, St Kilda defeated the West Coast Eagles by 14 points at Perth Stadium, 12-10, 82 to 10-8, 68. And Hawthorn had a 27-point win over the Adelaide Crows at the MCG. The ACT Brumbies have finished the Super Rugby Pacific season in third position after beating Western Force 24 points to 19 in Perth. The Brumbies will now play the Highlanders in the finals next weekend. Meantime, the Fijian and Drua booked a spot in the finals after defeating the Melbourne Rebels 40 to 19 in what was the Rebels' final match in the competition. The Queensland Reds will play the Chiefs next weekend after finishing in 5th position. To netball now, on the top of the table, West Coast Fever have beaten the Sunshine Coast Lightning. The lead changed hands on multiple occasions, but in the end, the Fever were victorious. 71 points to 68. The victory moved the Fever to the top of the competition ladder. Earlier, the Melbourne Vixens defeated the Giants 74 to 60 at John Cain Arena. Vixens shooter Sophie Garb was named player of the match.
Let's take a look at the weather around the country. In Queensland, significant cloud cover up the east coast, resulting in a few isolated showers. A mostly sunny day for central and southeastern districts. In New South Wales and the ACT, widespread rain and isolated thunderstorms. Isolated showers and some hail in the north. Dry and mostly sunny elsewhere. Showers extend into South Victoria, becoming scattered through East Gippsland. Tasmania is looking at a fine and sunny day across the north, partly cloudy in much of the remainder. A dry and mostly sunny day for much of South Australia after a cold start. Another strong cold front is approaching WA from the southwest. You can expect widespread showers for parts of the state, except in the Kimberley and North Interior, where it'll be sunny. And in the Northern Territory, partly cloudy across much of the Arnhem District, with a slight chance of some light showers in the northeast, mostly fine elsewhere. And let's look ahead to tomorrow's forecast for the capital cities. It'll be again sunny in Brisbane. The rain clears up in Sydney, leading to clear skies again. In Canberra, partly cloudy, mostly cloudy in Melbourne. There's a very high chance of rain in Hobart. In Adelaide, the approaching cold front from the west means cloud will build up again. And after a wet day today, showers in Perth will ease tomorrow. Darwin will be nice and sunny with a top of 33 degrees. And that's the latest from ABC News for now. I'm Ruby Cornish. Thank you so much for your company. Stay with us.